I've been married to Stephanie for almost 20 years, and if I had to bet my life, I would bet that she was so in tune with me that she could pick me out from a crowd of men, even if she was blindfolded. We had something of a psychic ability when it came to each other. Each of us always knew what the other was thinking, and we always seemed to be able to feel when the other was nearby. I am a traveling salesman and am usually on the road 2 weeks out of every 3. Steph has been the executive secretary of a manufacturing company since our 2 children were old enough to go to school. Because of my profession and the numerous separations it has caused, we have Steph had a fantastic personal life. She was always so happy to see me come home, and I was always so happy to be there, that we never reached the point in our marriage where sex became ho-ho-ho. It didn't hurt anyone that Steph loved sex and always wanted to experiment and try something new. She'd pick up a copy of Cosmopolitan and read an article about 10 ways to please her man, and if any of those ways involved sex, she just had to try it. A couple of years ago, she got her hands on a copy of the Kama Sutra, and we are still trying out different poses. She said we'll still be making love when we reach 80. Then a series of events occurred that undoubtedly changed my marriage and my life. I was on day 4 of a 7-day trip to the Northeast when my boss called me and told me I needed to rush home. Our home office just announced that they had acquired our largest competitor and that I needed to be present during the reallocation of sales territories. That meant I'd be home for the company Christmas party, Steph, which I would have otherwise missed. I almost grabbed my phone to tell her the good news, but at the last second I decided to just surprise her. Just 5 hours before the phone call from management, I was working with a customer demonstrating a new line of adhesives. One of the tubes burst under pressure, and some of the glue got onto my hair and beard. No amount of solvent, paint thinner, mica, or acetone could take it off, so I did the only thing I could, shaved my beard and cut my hair short. When the call came from my boss, I realized that I could come to Steph's party. I decided to play a little joke on her. Steph had never seen me without a beard, and she had never seen me with hair that wasn't long, 70s hippie style, although I did shorten it a bit as I got older. When I met her, I had a beard, and I never shaved it off. I decided to make a few more changes, show up at her party, wait until I could catch her under the mistletoe, and then kiss her passionately. She wouldn't know who I was until our lips met, and no one else there would know it was me either. I smiled, thinking about the rumors that would spread when her colleagues saw that she was attracted to a strange man. I went into a men's store and bought a new suit and tie so that I could be dressed in clothes that Steph I've never seen before. I went to the pharmacy and bought a pair of weak reading glasses, then packed my things and headed to the airport. When my flight landed, I drove to the office and spent the day working with Harry on the turnaround plan. At 5:30, I went home, confident that Steph will follow her usual habit of taking a change of clothes with her to work and that she will go to the party from work. She would also get a hotel room for the night so she wouldn't have to drive home drunk. I took the precaution of calling home when I was 2 blocks away, but received no answer. Just in case, I drove past the house looking for signs of life and parked further down the street. I went back to the house and looked out the window on the side of the garage, but her car wasn't there. So I went back and got my car and pulled into the driveway. I showered, shaved, and put on my new clothes, glasses with weak lenses, and, looking at myself in the mirror, wondered how long it would take Steps to get to know me. Given what we had with Psychic, I half expected her to know about me as soon as I walked through the door. I hoped not. I wanted to get her under the mistletoe before she guessed. The party was held in one of the ballrooms at the Marriott Hotel, and when I arrived, the dinner buffet was already ready. I noticed Steph at a table next to the area that will be used as a dance floor later in the evening. She was sitting with 3 other girls, and although it may have just been my imagination, I thought I saw her look up for a second as I entered. Did she really feel my presence? At this distance? She quickly looked around, but then returned to talking with her friends. I noticed an empty table in the far corner, so I grabbed a drink from the open bar, walked over to the table, and sat down. It will be at least an hour before the dancing begins, and I can arrange my little surprise. I was watching Steph and sipping a vodka tonic when the first test of the evening happened. 2 guys were heading towards my table. I looked around and saw that the empty chairs at my table were the only ones in the hall. I knew both men. I've met them at previous company outings and parties, but do they recognize me? Do you mind if we join you? Looks like you have the only seats in the room. I waved my hand towards the empty seats, and they sat down and introduced themselves. I lowered my voice to disguise it a bit and told them my real name. Tom asked me what company I worked for, but before I could lie, I was in for the first surprise of the evening. Steph stood up to go to the ladies' room and my jaw dropped. Her blouse was cut so low that her breasts were almost completely on display. She was wearing the shortest skirt I've ever seen, and she was wearing CFM shoes with 5-inch heels. She looked like a slut. Larry saw where I was looking. She's something, isn't she? Tom chimed in. Looks like someone might get lucky tonight. What does it mean? I asked. Her husband is out of town on business, and sometimes when he's not around, she has fun. Judging by the way she's dressed tonight, this might just be one of those times. What do you mean she's having fun? That's the thing with Steffi. You never know. She likes to be creative and rarely does the same thing twice. Suddenly, I wasn't interested in surprising my wife. It seemed like she was the one who was going to do the surprises. This year they used a DJ and records instead of a live band, and I watched as almost every guy there danced with Steph at least once. About an hour after the dance started, I saw a guy pass something Steph, and then I watched as she secured it in her hair. It was a large sprig of mistletoe. He took her out onto the dance floor, and then they kissed. It wasn't just a light kiss on the cheek. It was a long, hot, passionate kiss, and I saw the guy's hands slide down to Steph's ass and pull her towards him. Then the guy started to interfere, and the kisses remained hot and passionate, and not a single part of the body was missing Steph, which would not be felt. And Steph didn't do anything, not a single thing, to fight them off. Tom and Larry both got up to dance with her. Tom was dancing with her when the DJ called for a short break. Tom headed back to our table with Steph in tow. I braced myself for a confrontation, but when we were introduced, all she did was look at me strangely and ask, "Have we met?" In my changed voice, I said that we didn't do it. Strange. I have a strong feeling that I know you. I just shrugged, stood up and went to pour myself another drink. When I returned to the table, Steph and Tom were kissing, and Larry had his hand up her skirt. Tom and Steph broke the kiss when I sat down, and Steph turned to me and asked, "Are you sure we've never met?" Positive. Just then the DJ started playing the music again, and Steph looked at me and asked, "Are you going to ask me to dance?" "Sorry, I don't dance. I have bad knees." "It's a pity," she said, and leaned towards me. "I wouldn't want you to be the only one here who didn't kiss me under the mistletoe." She kissed me, and her tongue entered my mouth. I waited a second and then returned the favor. Now, she'll understand, I thought. But when she pulled away, all she did was look at me strangely, and then Larry pulled her out onto the dance floor again. Over the next hour, I watched Steph do almost everything on the dance floor except actual intercourse. She glanced at me every now and then, and I expected that at any moment a light bulb would light up above her head. As the party began to wind down, Steph left the dance floor and walked over to my table. "We're going to take the party upstairs to room 921. You're invited." Knocked 3 times, and she left. I was torn between going up to my room or going home and waiting for her, but curiosity eventually won out, and after drinking a few cups of coffee at the hotel's 24-hour coffee shop, I headed to room 921. I knocked 3 times and Larry answered the door. "Come and rate a number." The door closed behind me, and all my attention was focused on what was happening on the bed. Steph had passionate sex with a man. 5 other men stood around, stroking their assets and waiting either for their turn or for their seconds. Tom walked up to me. "I told you she was something special, didn't I? If I were her husband, I would never go away and leave her alone." I just stood there and watched as man after man pleasured Steph. Things started to slow down as the guys got dressed and started to leave. Steph looked at me and noticed that I was still standing fully clothed. She frowned and then made an inviting gesture with her hand. "Come here. Come here, mysterious man. I know you from somewhere, and I think I'd like to get to know you a little better." She turned over on her back, spread her legs and arms, and said, "Come on, honey." I just stood there looking down at her for a few seconds, and then shook my head and said in my normal voice, "No thanks, Pooh. That's my nickname for her." "I don't think so." I saw her recognize me, and then a shocked look appeared on her face as I turned and left the room to go home and wait. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.